What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Wild, episode 21, a regular podcast, YouTube video, web series thing. My name is Meowth. As usual, we've got Corbett joining us tonight. Corbett, how are you, friend?
G'day, Meowth. I am doing fantastically today. Doing really well. So, yeah, just looking set in a few days. How are you?
Doing pretty well. It's the expansion time. I hate playing old decks. Hate playing against old decks. I'm just looking forward to new stuff and seeing how it potentially shakes up the meta. And so, because of that, expansion's in 2 days, so screw the old stuff. We're going to just be talking about Darkmoon Faire today. But before we get started, just a reminder, leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy our content. Help us out with our YouTube algorithm. It's free, and it does actually support us a lot. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive right on into Darkmoon Faire. We're going to be doing a couple things today. Essentially doing a series of like quick hot takes, a pseudo review of the expansion really quickly. And so we're going to be talking about our favorite cards, our most powerful cards, some sleepers, overrated, some decks that we've theorycrafted, all that kind of good stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about the 5 most powerful cards in our opinion from Darkmoon Faire. Corbett, give me your top 5 cards from Darkmoon Faire.
Sure. The first one I think we should start off with is Oh My Yogg. Seems like a really disruptive card for, a really card for Odd Paladin, right? It's a little bit tricky to evaluate, I think, because the effect is so random. But I think that in general, being highly disruptive in like an Odd Paladin wild deck, it seems really effective. So I'm sure that'll slot in. Seems very annoying for most control players out there. I think it's seen as like one of the big support pieces of this set. So yeah, Oh My Yogg. Occult Conjurer is another one, which again slots into an existing decent or strong deck. As a 4-mana 4/4, summon a copy, so a much bigger Saronite Chain Gang if you have a secret up. It's generally very easy to have a secret up as the Secret Mage, very consistent, and it kind of fills this like empty slot that was there at that 4-mana space, right? Yeah. Where previously you were often just going like 2-drop ping or something like similar, or double 2-drop. So yeah, getting that extra board presence in the early game is really strong. The next one that I had in mind was Deck of Chaos. Yeah. Deck of Chaos is sort of an LPG Lunar Pocket Galaxy light. So where Warlock hasn't really had this ability to kind of compete in the end game with decks like LPG Mage as much. Now it can really do these broken mana cheating things, right? All of a sudden, your N'Zoth costs 5, your Void Lords are 3-mana 9/9s. You have like a 5-mana 8/7 Dreadlord. It just kind of lets you do these very, very insane swings. And as a Reno lock, you've never really had access to that. Like Reno lock's entire thing for the most part has been about just kind of like cheating out demons and kind of grinding out. But now you can do some really swingy Lothab stuff if you want. So it's kind of really cool. And the last 2 that I had in mind are 2 cards that I think are really, really strong, but kind of fit into some weaker archetypes. The first being Petting Zoo. Petting Zoo is reminiscent of Spellstone. And it's consistently, I think, going to be very good on curve, where it pairs really well with a Mad Scientist. You play the Scientist, you trade it off on 3, and all of a sudden you get a pair of 3/3s. Really good piece for Hunter. Will Hunter be good enough? Will Secret Hunter be good enough? Probably not, but I think it's a really, really important piece for that archetype moving forward. And the last one was Blood of Goon. Similarly, it's a big piece, I think, for Big Priest, where it's an excellent hit off your Essence or Barnes or something like that. It has Taunt itself, which is amazing, right? Because you're developing multiple things and getting multiple stuff in the res pool. It's very annoying, like it's a must-kill target. Your opponent has to interact with it because of the Taunt. It seems like a really, really good piece for Big Priest and a massive support. But again, like Big Priest has been very weak for a long time. Yeah. So will it be enough? We'll see. But yeah, those are my top 5 coming out of the set.
Yeah, so looking at your top 5, I don't think anybody would bring up any beef with any of the cards you put in your top 5. I had a lot of overlap. I had 3 out of the same, but Occult Conjurer and Blood of Cahoon are the 2 that I don't have. But they're like up there in my top 10, so I think they're definitely
they're like honorables, right?
Yeah. I'm really excited for Occult Conjurer in Secret Mage. That plus a couple of the new cards look really, 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 really strong. So yeah, for my top 5, I did mine a little bit differently. I put them in actual power level for me, but we'll see. So for me, coming in at number 5 is the new Yogg Saron. I actually think this card, I think a lot of people are like, Yogg memes, but I think actually Yogg's just really, really powerful, right? Back in Standard, he was a really, really good card because of the fact that he like could swing board states back into your favor. And New Yogg does that, but like 10 times more consistently, right? Because all 5 of his options that are not Rod of Roasting are pretty consistent at kind of recovering board states. So stuff in like stuff that's in Jade Druid, a couple of other decks that I have in mind, and he's going to be really, really good. I think it's going to be really annoying to play against, right? When you get kind of wrecked by the RNG, but I mean, it's Yogg, and he's pretty damn powerful. Coming in for number 4, for me is Sage, just because I didn't want to put 3 Secret Mage cards up here, but I have like 3 Secret Mage cards in the top 10 with Rigged Fair Game, I think also up in the top 10 for me. But for a long time, like Secret Mage sucks with draw, right? Like if it doesn't hit all enough, the deck kind of peters out super hard, and Sage solves that. I think this is very easily going to be like a 6 mana 5/5 that draws 4 or 5 cards in Secret Mage, which is just kind of insane. Number 3, I have Petting Zoo. Like I said, or like you said, Petting Zoo is a very, very good card. Even though it's really powerful, I don't know if it's going to see a ton of play, like you mentioned. Hunter needs like 10 more Petting Zoos, and then we're talking.
Yeah.
Number 2, I have Deck of Chaos. I mean, melding my 2 favorite decks together, of course, right? LPG Mage and Reno, and the ability to do dumb things with value and tempo at the same time is just, gotta love it. And then for me, I got Oh My Yogg. Silly little 1 mana Paladin secret. Gonna break our format. Not really, but it's gonna be really, really good in our format, which is insane. So yeah, I think we are pretty consistent with our top cards in this set. I also had a couple like honorable mentions. Rigged Fair Game I had up in here. I think Acrobatics. If Odd Demon Hunter makes a comeback, it's because of Acrobatics and how powerful that card is. And yeah, I don't know if you had any others. I'm looking at my thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the top end of the expansion is fairly clear, right? Like I think that it's I guess like staggered or something is how I describe it, where there's kind of a big drop off between the stuff that looks kind of okay and things like kind of go downhill very quickly. So like it's not surprising that there's a strong overlap here. Other ones that I kind of thought of were, like Sage, like you mentioned, I think. Although I have some slight reservations about Sage, where if it's only drawing 2 to 3 cards on turn 6, I don't know how quite good that is, but I don't know. That's my only slight issue. Other ones to include, I think, Insight as the priest spell.
The priest Farsight. Yeah.
The priest Farsight. That's another one that deserves a shout. But yeah, I think like overall, like Revolve is like probably the last one that I want to mention as a evolved kind of effect.
Evolve plus
with
devolve
also being
together.
plus the evolve in one flexible card. So like that is very, very flexible. It has a lot of upside in various matchups, right? Where it can be good into odd pally, for example, but also really good against like the control stuff where you need the evolve effect. So yeah, that's another one. But yeah, for the most part, I think the top few cards kind of all, relatively clear, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's like 10-15 cards that are probably going to see play in Wild in some capacity. Then there's like another tier of like 10-15 cards that are like, they'll go in memes, they're fringe cards, maybe they're worth testing. Or they're going to go in like tier 5 decks, and so you're probably not going to see them a ton. And then you kind of have everything else. So yeah, I mean, but for what it's worth, I think we're a little bit spoiled from Skullomance. Like in a normal expansion, if we had 10 or 15 cards that looked playable from a set, we'd be super excited, right? So looking at that, now let's move on to our top 5 favorite cards. So this is different than the most powerful. These are the ones that you're looking the most forward to playing. And so I can start us off here. I've got Foxy Fraud. So this is the 2 mana. Is it a 3/2? I think.
It is a 3/2. Yeah. 2 mana 3/2.
2 mana 3/2. Battlecry makes your next combo card cost 2 less. So obviously, your tempo rogues, right? Whether you're playing it as super aggressive or you're playing it in Gallicron, this card is just kind of nutty. When it comes to activating your Minstrel or your Edwin or your, I guess your Evil Miscreant, right? Like you've got tons of cards to activate. Your raiding parties, right? If you're playing it in a more aggressive list as well. I think it's just a really, really fun card. I don't know if Kingsbane Rogue and Gallicron Rogue are going to be super competitive, which is why I like put it down here in my top 5 favorite, but those are decks that I like to play, so they're in here. Grand Finale, this is the 8 mana mage spell, summon an 8 elemental, and then it repeats for every elemental that you played the turn before. So this is the mage spell. Mage elementals just like didn't have any support, so I'm just really excited for it to have some support. Right? And it's a really, really good card, I think. For me, I think the big issue is that it's 8 mana for a ton of stats, and usually that's not fast enough for Wild. But I'm excited to play it because it's Elemental Mage synergy, and I just like those archetypes. Grand Totem Eyesore. This is a legendary totem for Shaman. I was theorycrafting a little bit of that totem shamans that you and I used to play, like 2 or 3 months ago?
Yeah.
With Grand Totem Eyesore, and it looks good in that deck. And that deck was actually a ton of fun to play, so I'm going to be messing around with that, just hoping I can dodge Priest with that. And then my top 2 favorite cards actually overlap a little bit with my most powerful. New Yogg, I mean, it's Yogg. Like, if you're not excited to play it, I don't know what to say. Corbett doesn't have it, by the way. That's why.
Yeah, spoilers.
And then my most, like, the card that I'm looking forward to the most is Deck of Chaos. Like I kind of spoiled in the most powerful. This is kind of the melding together of my 2 favorite decks right now, Reno Lock and LPG Mage. And I don't know, I could talk forever about Deck of Chaos and the stupid things that you could do with it. But yeah, those are my 5 favorite cards that I'm looking forward to playing the most in Darkmoon Faire.
So yeah, we actually have a lot of overlap, I think, between our favorite cards. I had Foxy Fraud as well, which, in Standard is probably actually one of the most powerful cards in the set. In Wild, less so, just because of the type of deck that it supports. But yeah, I think Foxy Fraud is really kind of nutty and looks really fun. Deck of Chaos is another one where I had it in my powerful cards as well. You have it in your favorites. I have it in my favorites. I really like LPG Reno Mage a lot. And so, anything that kind of lets me be more proactive and sort of do nutty stuff in the mid to late game in a Reno deck makes me very happy, because I tend to really like those types of archetypes a lot more than more slow grind out stuff. So I'm really, really excited for what Deck of Chaos can do for Reno Lock and how that plays out. The other ones that I had were Nazmani Bloodweaver. It's the priest minion, a 3 mana 2/5. Every time you cast a spell, discount a card in your hand by 1. There's some really nuts stuff that you could do with this, where you have those infinite loops, right? With like Radiant, Test Subject, Embalming, Topsy. So like if you have this and Nazami out, you can like loop out your entire hand, discard your entire hand, maybe get an Auctioneer down to 0, and then draw through your entire deck and just like discard.
That's really going to test your APM. Holy crap.
Yeah, I don't know about my APM, but I think it could be really fun in like the boss battles or heroic, like heroic adventure stuff where you don't have that rope. There's probably some fun things you can do there. Yeah. In general, though, I just think the card's really cool and has a lot of potential down the road in that kind of archetype. Other ones that stood out to me were Acrobatics. You mentioned it as a powerful card. Yeah, it's powerful and I actually like it a lot. I like it because of the direction that it pushes. Demon Hunter, it's a like a really nice build around, I think, that pushes this low curve, very aggressive, draw heavy kind of archetype. So I also think it's kind of interesting in terms of like the design, just because of like the deck building that it pushes. I think it's kind of like cool when cards kind of push things in a certain direction. And the last one would be Solar Eclipse. I don't think Solar Eclipse actually has enough support right now to be that good, but I think eventually it'll be something that is either interesting or degenerate or maybe a mix.
Or both.
In a similar way where like Blood Bloom was always kind of there. And I think Solar Eclipse has some potential, except in a different archetype and a different class where it feels a bit more suited, I suppose. Where Druid feels like it probably should be doing very broken things with big spells. So yeah, I don't know about Solar Eclipse right now, but I think like down the road it could like push an archetype by itself. But yeah, that's kind of all that I had in mind.
Well, I just want to point out a couple things. So basically, clip that last little part of the YouTube video where he says he's excited about Solar Eclipse, so that when it gets broken in 2 years and he's complaining about it, we have evidence.
Yep.
And then Acrobatics, I just wanted to touch on it. I really like this. Like they explore like these new sub themes or things to do with classes, and I really like this whole if you played it this turn, get an additional effect. I really like what they did with Demon Hunter this set.
It does feel very Demon Hunter, right? Where you're just rushing in and doing something in similar ways. Like I don't know, like it just feels like the class is continually getting more fleshed out as they explore these new mechanics that all feel very much in line with what the class should be.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I really love Demon Hunter flavor, and I wish it was more competitive in Wild at least.
Yeah, we'll see.
But yeah, so these are our top 5 favorite cards. You probably catch us playing decks with these cards on day one. So make sure you guys, check us out on our Twitch channels. #sellout. And so for the next little part of this, we call this our Quarter Creeper and Glide of the Set section. So basically what this is our most underrated and our most overrated cards of the set. Stuff that we don't see people talking about, right, when they really should, because it's a really, really powerful card, really powerful effect. Or the card that we, that like Quarter Keeper, right? Or cards like Glide, where people are freaking out about it when the card's going to see less than 0% play.
Yep.
So you want to go ahead and start off with, what is your Quarter Creeper of the set?
Yeah, so the thing with the set, again, is because it's so top heavy, it's kind of hard to find the corridor creeper, like the underrated card that seems good. So I had like two things that kind of stood out to me. The first being Stage Dive. Yeah. Stage Dive being the 1-mana warrior spell, draw a rush minion, and if it's corrupted, it gives it +2/+1. I think this card is actually very, very strong in a deck like Galakrond Warrior, where it synergizes incredibly well with Scion of Ruin. All of a sudden you have multiple, 5/3s instead of the 3/2s. And given how cheap it is, it's very easy to corrupt. And it's also like a good card to draw as like a 1-cost card, as a tutor. It's actually very good to draw it on like turns 2, 3, 4. Like it scales really well as the game goes on, especially because it's a corrupt effect, where it gets even more powerful as you can synergize it, as it can synergize with like higher cost cards. So I don't know, it seems really strong. It's also fine to just play down a 1 if you ever need to as the draw effect. So yeah, it seems really good. And the other one that kind of stood out to me was Minefield. Minefield, I don't think is actually that good, but I just saw no one talking about it. Apparently you were talking about it in your card review, or Theorycrafting that you were doing. But I think like broadly on the whole, people aren't really mentioning Minefield at all. I think it could definitely find a home in Dead Man's Hand, as it compares really favorably to Bladestorm. I think it's a mana cheaper, and I think that it can just like clean up very different board states, right? Whether we're talking about like an aggro druid board, like they explode onto the board with a whole bunch of gibblings on turn 1, and you just like coin this out. I don't know, like that seems really effective to me. And I think, and even like if you need to just take out a single target removal, like a single 5/5 or a single 4/4, it's like very good for 2 mana as well. So it's very flexible and kind of fits like an empty slot in DMH, which doesn't really have great AoE apart from the skipper right now. So yeah, those are the two that stood out to me. What did you have?
Well, I was excited about Minefield just because like I compared it a little bit to Dark Skies, where like Dark Skies is normally like 3 mana deal 8. This is 2 mana deal 5, and Dark Skies is one of the best AoE cards in the game. Right? Warrior's not really hurting for AoE, but I think it was a really good card. Like it kills pirates. Like if they go 2/1 plus Brigand plus Patches, like it cleans up the board. It's really, really good. But yeah, so my Quarter Creeps of the set, my sleepers. I also had Stage Dive. I was just a big fan of it. Like Town Crier is one of the most busted cards printed, and this is basically a slightly worse Town Crier, so I think this is very, very good. And then I had Stilt Stepper, so I think a lot of cards in Demon Hunter are kind of slept on just because Demon Hunter is like really garbage right now. But this is one of those cards where like draw a card, and then if you play it this turn, you get +4 attack, which is I think really, really good, especially if you're pushing this like pretty low to the ground, lean Demon Hunter that's running like 18 to 21 drops. Like you're pretty likely going to have this active. And so I think this is just going to be really, really good in Demon Hunter alongside Acrobatics. I think a lot of people are talking about Acrobatics, but nobody's really talking about this card. I think the only downside is the fact that it only has 1 health, which is a little bit sus, but I mean, it's a 4/1 draw card, give your hero +4 attack most of the time, which is, I think, pretty good.
Yeah, I think my opinion on Stilt Stepper has actually changed a bit. Where if you had have asked me 2 days ago, I would have given us the card like 1 star. And I think it's just because I wasn't really thinking about just how much you can change the build, right? Like I was very much in a Lothab, Adept, Leroy, Baku, like very like normal top end for odd DH. And the issue with that is that like this card is really, really bad on curve if you don't get the effect off. Yeah. But like if you're consistently getting the effect off on turns 4 and 5, like really consistently with lots and lots of 1-drops, then yeah, it does become a lot more palatable, I think. And so yeah, I might have just been underrating just how much you can actually fill the deck with 1-drops, especially with the printing of Acrobatic. And I might not have been thinking enough about how those work, how those cards are kind of pushing the direction together rather than this is more of a standalone.
Yeah, I think Demon Hunter as a whole is going to see kind of this like restructuring of the deck. I still don't know how good it's going to be, but Acrobatics and Stilt Stepper kind of address one weakness that it did have, which was running out of gas in the mid game.
Mm-hmm.
Like post turn 4, turn 5, you kind of like just fell apart after they nerfed the Warglaves, and this really addresses that. And I'm excited to see that, like how Demon Hunter kind of shapes up post expansion. Really excited for the new Demon Hunter. Moving on to our glide of the set. So this is our most overrated cards. We both have a couple that we might want to talk about, but the card that I saw revealed, so it was revealed while I was sleeping, and I woke up and I saw so many messages and notifications about, oh my god, Odd Paladin is broken. How could they print this card? And they were talking about Lothraxion the Redeems. This is the 5-mana 5/5 Paladin legendary battle cry. Your recruits that you summon have Divine Shield for the rest of the game. And I was like, well, shit, this is a really powerful effect. Yeah, giving my recruits Divine Shield for the rest of the game is pretty powerful. And then I looked at it and I was like, well, this is 5 mana. And it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
When it enters the board.
Interesting.
And you're talking about Odd Paladin, the deck that's trying to win the game by turn 5, turn 6. It was like, it's a really powerful effect, but it's so slow. Like this is a standard Dude Paladin or like a pure Dude Paladin card. I don't think this card is a wild Odd Paladin list. I think wild Odd Paladin, very similar to Demon Hunter, is like 15 1-drops, right? Your good 3-drops, Baku, and then like Leroy. And like that's kind of your curve for Odd Paladin. And Lothraxion just does not fit with what the deck wants to do. And if you're trying to slow down Odd Paladin to fit this card in, you're just going to get kind of run over by everything else that just has more powerful swings turn 6, turn 7, turn 8. So I think Lothraxion, I saw so much talk about this card. I think this card is not very good. It's going to see a lot of play, I think, at the beginning of the expansion, but ultimately is going to be cut by everybody, and people are going to regret crafting it, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said, where, its late game effect is obviously strong, but it's a 5-mana 5/5, and Odd Paladin is one of the aggressive decks in particular that can't really afford to just do that because it has no ability to push any tempo at all apart from play that 5/5. So yeah, and again, it's like the Divine Shield's really pushing that much in late game when you look at Druid, Priest, Warlock matchups. Not really. Like, it's a good effect, obviously, but really worth that turn off? I have some doubts. And Warwood is doing Odd Paladin bashing. Why don't I join it? With my glide of the set being what's it called? Carnival Barker.
The 3-drop, yeah.
Yeah, the 3-drop, the 3-mana 3/2. Whenever you summon a 1 health minion, I believe, give it +1/+2. Yeah, a lot of people went nuts over for this card as well, right? Along with Legendary, where people went nuts, and I think that people kind of went a little over the top on this, where it actually doesn't compare that favorably to Steward of Darkshire, in my opinion.
It's so much worse than Steward, in my opinion.
It can never be played on curve. You cannot play this on curve against just about anything, because 2 health does not stick in our format. Like, 2 health is a disaster. Steward, you obviously don't want to be playing on curve, but you can do it in certain situations.
Yeah.
So Barker is almost always going to be like either a turn 4 play paired with like Tour Guide or Lost. The thing is with Tour Guide is that you typically want to be playing that as ASAP, like as fast as you can, to maintain board presence. And same kind of with Lost. There's the chance that you can just kind of hold off on the hero power with Tour Guide, but again, that seems really iffy. And then otherwise, on turn 5+, it's kind of like you're making a 3/2 and a couple of 2/3s, which isn't amazing. It's just kind of okay. It might arguably even be worse than the Divine Shield at that stage of the game, given that you really want your...
It plays even harder into Defile, right?
Like, yeah, it plays hard into Defile, and it plays like really hard into like other AoE, whether it's like a Spirit Lash or something, right? Where not a Spirit Lash, but like I guess like a Hellfire or any sort of like normal AoE, right? That they can actually interact and actually kill your thing, where the Divine Shield wouldn't have been able to. So yeah, I think like it was actually very funny going through the Twitter feed, as you were saying, and seeing the reaction to it. We even had like people like Meaty. Meaty's one of the best standard players. He tweeted out saying, if anyone still plays Wild, Odd Palette is looking completely broken with the new Darkmoon cards. Oh my Yogg equals no more Psycho Scream. Lothraxion equal 2 recruits with Divine Shield. Lol. So it's even getting standard players up and excited. And I think a lot of people who are more experienced in the format are actually the ones who are very, very low on these cards relative to the rest of the player base.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong, Carnival Barker is a powerful effect. It's just not more powerful than Steward of Darkshire, and you don't really have space in the list for both, right?
Yeah, I think Steward is also
thing.
one of the weakest cards in the Odd Paladin, right? And so like the fact that I think it's worse than Steward is a really bad sign. But yeah,
I think what we're saying is Odd Paladin might be the most overrated deck out of this expansion. I think it's getting better because Oh My Yogg is absolutely broken. I think we both had it as in our top 5, but yeah. I think these two cards, hold off on crafting these if you're looking to upgrade your Odd Paladin list, because ultimately in the long run they're probably not going to see play in our opinion. And then one card we were talking about, I have to do a little bit of a shout out to this because I was one of the ones that was initially like kind of excited about this card because it was like the new Warlock legendary and I was excited to play it. But Takatis, 6-mana 8/8 demon, Battlecry, mill the top 5 cards of your deck. If it's corrupted, it mills the top 5 of your opponent's deck. I was building Reno Lock. I sat down and I theorycrafted it and I built it, and I like shoved Takatis in immediately. And then the longer I stared at it, I was like, this card just does not make sense in the deck. It's so bad because you run Willow, and Willow's kind of insane in Reno Lock. Willow and Voidcall, you don't want 6-mana 8/8s that have no effects. You want Mal'Ganis, you want taunts. And it's actually so hard to corrupt in Reno Lock because when I was looking at my list, the only cards that are more expensive than Takatis are Godfrey, and then like a bunch of demons that you want to be cheating into play, and then Gul'dan Zoth. And so like ultimately you're playing this like super late game, and then at that point, like, is this really even better than just like Brand, Gnome Feratu, Zola, Double Gnome, and Mill 6?
Yeah.
And these are cards that you want to be running in your deck anyways. And so I very sadly cut this card, but this is just one that I wanted to bring up. Like, I was initially really hype on it, and I apologize if I was a little bit hype in my initial like review of it, but like the longer I look at this card, like the less appealing that it looks.
Yeah, I think like Gnome Feratu's existence actually invalidates a lot of what this card wants to be doing, right? It's exactly what you said with that Bran, Gnome, Zola combo. Like we can already win the fatigue game as like Reno Lock if we don't want to go that route. And a 2/3 is so much better. Like it's so much better against the non-aggro, against the aggro matchups, right? Even if it is just a River Croc, it's a lot better than an 8/8 that doesn't have taunt, right? That gets cheated out instead of your Void Lord. It's a lot better than some, even if it doesn't get cheated out, right? Just seeing your hand doing nothing is like a 6-mana 8/8. Yeah, I think this is total bait in Arena Lock. And I think like there was a lot of hype of it initially. People have actually in general kind of tapered off the hype for this one. So yeah, I think like Arena Lock does get an improvement with Deck of Chaos, but sadly Takada's probably not going to be a thing in Wild. I think in Standard it could actually be quite relevant, especially with Yashaj getting like the corrupted version back. Yeah, like a control warlock in Standard. But again, I'm not super familiar, and we're talking Wild. So in Wild, I don't think this is very good at all.
I think the biggest bait about this card is like it's literally unplayable until it's corrupted. Like you can't play it.
Yeah.
Like it's not even like Gnome where you can at least play it out on 2. This is not a card that you can just play out on 6. Like you lose the game if you do that. So I took out this big bait. But yeah, that's gonna be it for our card review kind of analysis portion of the episode. And last little bit here, we're gonna be talking about decks that are getting kind of biggest upgrades, or like kind of the meta decks that are getting significant upgrades from Darkmoon Faire, and talk through a little bit of our Theorycrafts. So we have 7 decks to talk to you about. Corbett, do you want to take it away with the first one?
Yeah, dude, I'd love to talk about everyone's favorite deck in the entire format. Let's jump into Big Priest, guys. So yeah, Big Priest. I think Big Priest is it's arguably the biggest winner, no pun intended, of the entire set.
That's not what you want to hear.
It really got some pretty significant upgrades. Like we already touched on Blood of Gahun. I still don't know how to say that. Should I be saying Gahun or Goon? I don't.
Dude, I still don't know how to say Yasharj or Yashara or whatever his name is, so I don't.
God, it's 2020. Let's not think about
priest
this.
names. Dude.
It's been out too long. All right, so yeah, Big Priest got a massive upgrade here, where it's an amazing hit, like we were talking about earlier, off the Essence. It actually pushes you to play Barnes. I think that Barnes in general has obviously been cut for some time from Big Priest, but it really does incentivize you to play Barnes, right? Where it's just such a ridiculous being able to get that 1 mana blood, and all of a sudden that blood kind of recruits out of your charge or a scrapyard, or a big Ziliax potentially if you're playing Ziliax. And so yeah, that's a really significant upgrade. The other thing that it got is palm reading. Palm reading by itself isn't the most powerful card, I think, but I think that giving you 1 potential turn quicker on your Shadow Essence is such a big deal. Like that really is the difference, right? Whether you can turn like 5 versus 6 between like living or dying. So I think like those are the 2 significant things, and I can see Big Priest kind of coming back a little bit. Something I have been thinking about in Big Priest though is, do you actually think we're meant to be playing like double Scream, or does that even make sense in the current year? I don't know.
Well, I mean,
not to narrow it too hard.
I can see the merit for not running double Scream, because the only matchups that those are super relevant in are basically Aggro Druid and Odd Paladin. Like, in my opinion, the rest of them kind of
It's so expensive.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But like in those matchups, if you're getting to turn 7, you should be winning, because at that point, hopefully you've hit your Shadow Essence or your Barnes. And so I could totally seeing it being cut. I'm actually looking at your list, and I'm very surprised by like Scrapyard Colossus over something like
Obsidian Statue?
Yeah, that's what it's called, Obsidian Statue, because for me, when I'm playing an aggro deck, that's the card that I really hate when it comes down, is the Lifesteal Taunt. But I've seen multiple people talking about Scrap. I'm not a big Priest player. I'm not a big deck player. That's not Warlock. So I don't know the logic behind this. You want to kind of talk through that for people that are listening?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot more like stats straight up, where it is that. I mean, that's stats where it's a 7/7 and has another 7/7 behind it. So in terms of like life gain, it's relatively similar, where they're putting in 14 compared to 8 plus the lifesteal. So sometimes Statue will heal a little bit extra than that, but it's pretty similar if they'd have to trade through both. And in like more slower matchups, like against a Reno Mage, for example, the Obsidian is annoying, but a 7/7 Scrapyard is really annoying for like a Reno Mage to deal with, or another Warlock to deal with. So it's just like a similar thing against aggro. It's a much better hit as well, I think, off a Barnes or even like a Blood at that point.
Yeah.
So I just think Scrapyard makes a lot of sense. And even if you're resing the Death Rattle part of it with your Spellstones and stuff, I don't think you're very upset once you're getting down to 7/7 taunt. It's not like there's that much of a downside between that and a Statue at that kind of stage of the game. But yeah, I'm not like a Big Priest expert myself. I haven't played for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think I genuinely will be trying this out when the expansion drops. I can't believe I just said that. Can we edit this out? I don't.
Nope. You guys clip this as well, right? This is the second part. Hold it over his head. Corbett is excited to play Big Priest.
I really am. God.
I'm looking at Blood Cahoon, and it literally looks like you charge 2 and 3, which is kind of
scary. If not slightly better in the deck, because it has taunt itself. I feel like that's
actually.
Yeah.
Do you ever cut your charge now that you have Blood Cahoon?
You can.
And run like Ziliax instead.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, or even going down to I think. I still think with Barnes in the deck, your charge is worth. Where you kind of want to maximize the odds of hitting like those big recruits off the Barnes as much as possible. But yeah, I can certainly imagine it, given that your charge doesn't have taunt. But yeah, my guess would be yes, you keep playing it.
Okay. Anyways, we're not going to refine Big Priest. I'm not going to refine Big Priest. Screw that. So next up, let's talk about Secret Hunter. I think this is a deck that a lot of people, myself and you included, were kind of excited by a lot of these. So what I've got on the screen is my kind of Theorycraft for Secret Hunter, taking advantage of a couple new cards, specifically the Mystery Winner. Mystery Winner? What was the one drop called? Mystery Winner?
Mystery Winner? Yeah, Mystery Winner.
The 1 mana 1/1 Discover a Secret. And then obviously you've got Inconspicuous Rider and Petting Zoo, which are pretty good cards. No Rexar. Rexar's bad when you're playing a face deck like the Secret Hunter wants to be. And I think the one inclusion that was like a little bit spicy was the 2 animated broomsticks. I'm a little bit like, for me, the big issue with Secret Hunter is if you lose board, there's no getting it back, because then your 3/3s, they get to dictate trades. And so I want to try Broomstick with stuff like Petting Zoo and the Spellstone and just see if that helps make it super clean. But other than that, like the secret composition obviously changes with what you're playing against. I just kind of shoved in a bunch of good cards, as well as tour guide, face stalker, all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, I mean, the Secret Hunter list looks clean. It looks good. The question remains whether it will play well.
Yeah, I built almost the exact same thing where I didn't have the inconspicuous, and I had like kill command and secret keeper instead. I think the broom though is a really good shout. Like it's something that I definitely thought about a lot when I was kind of theorycrafted the deck because of exactly what you're saying, where it does give your like your petting zoo and stuff just that little bit more ability to swing the board back or even spellstone as late as turn 6. I do have some slight reservations about that because costly combo where you need to apparently have secrets out on turns 2 and 3 and then go like petting zoo broom on 4. It seems a little iffy to me, or even spellstone, but I certainly understand the idea. But yeah, Hunter, like, dude, Hunter, it just didn't quite get enough in terms of the early game, right? It didn't quite get enough ways to push damage and really like fight for board in a really like in just the way that it really needs to.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that we were talking about when we were looking at our like end of the month review, right? Where like Hunter like keeps getting the situation where it's getting small buffs to a bunch of classes rather than just enough buffs to make a deck playable. So it keeps falling behind. Like when I was theorycrafting this, I was just like, dude, I just want a good 1-drop for Hunter. If you look at all the 1-drops, they're all like 1-mana 2/2s. I'm like, these suck. I don't want to play them. They're so bad.
Yeah. I still am excited for Mystery Winner. I think like Mystery if it was a 1/2, I think it would be really premium 1-drop comparable to like Town Crier sort of. But as a 1/1, I think it's fine, like serviceable. But yeah, Secret Hunter still like Petting Zoo is such a ridiculous card that I think it's good enough to, you know, like we'll play this. I think this kind of direction though as well with the build is a good one. So yeah, I'll still be playing Secret Hunter, I think.
Yeah, dude, Cloak Huntress into like 3 or 4 secrets, and then Petting Zoo Broomstick on turn 4.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. But yeah, so let's move on to our next deck. So we're going from Secret Hunter to Secret Mage. We're talking about a lot of secrets. So basically what we did, so this is my build. Basically what I did is I took out Arcane Mysteries in place of Occult Conjurers. And we're running the new secret, and we're running Sage. So I had to cut Poke Out to make room for all of this, and I think when you're running a lot more card draw, the Poke Out might not be as necessary, because kind of the big deal with Poke Out was hitting the All Enough. And if you're running a lot more draw, you don't really need that. Time will tell whether that was correct or not. But I think the biggest reason that I'm really excited for Sage in this list was because previously when you would hit Poke Out, and then you would hit Alleneth, and then you would have to wait to play the Crystal Runners that you drew into. Where like here you hit Sage, and then if you're drawing 4 or 5 cards off of him, then you're like able to immediately play Crystal Runners that you draw into, which I think is super exciting, and get just an insane amount of stats down on the board. But yeah, other than that, like the list just looks super, super tight and super clean. So you took out the bad cards and put in the good cards, and yeah, looks good.
Secret Mage, definitely one of the decks that people are most fearful of. We're alongside Odd Paladin, probably. But as we've talked about, Odd Paladin might not be as good as people are expecting, or has gotten as much as we were expecting. But yeah, Secret Mage. So I still like the Ancient Mysteries, particularly with the 4/4s. In theory, they are the weakest card, the Ancient Mysteries, but the fact that you might be able to hold the secret and guarantee that 4/4 trigger seems like a big deal. But like you said, the deck is so ridiculously tight. Like, I don't know what the hell I should be cutting from this list. I'm looking at it and I'm like, are we cutting a Fireball? I don't know.
I think I literally sat there. I was like, am I cutting Arcane Mysteries or am I cutting Fireball? And like, I was like, you can't cut Fireball from Secret Maze. Let me cut Arcane Mysteries. But it might actually be right to cut Fireballs. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Secret Mage definitely got a big boost. You know, again, when like these good decks get a couple pieces, it tends to get a lot back in the archetype. So I'm sure we'll see a lot more Secret Mage once the expansion drops.
Yeah, get your Eater of Secrets out on day 1. Haha, just kidding. Don't you dare do that.
Please don't.
Okay, so we're going from basically we're talking about the decks that we build. So sorry if it sounds like I'm talking a lot, but we're moving from Secret Mage to Reno Secret Mage. So I think this is an archetype that both of us kind of agree is kind of criminally underplayed. I think this deck is very, very good, like currently, and it's getting a hell of a lot better in Darkmoon Faire, where I think it's picking up Game Master, it's picking up Inconspicuous Writer, the new Secret, Occult Conjurer, and Sage. So what is that? That's 5 new cards for Reno Secret Mage, all of which are pretty damn good. I think the only one that I'm iffy on is Game Master, but it's in a Reno deck, and it's kind of a weaker effect of Kirintor, which is a really damn powerful card. So I think you have to run it. Like, redundancy in the powerful effects is good. And what I've actually done is, like, I think Oleneth, because you're a lot less vomit onto the board like regular Secret Mage, it's a lot harder to dump your hand when you're playing Oleneth. So I actually cut Oleneth and put in a Jandis. We'll see if that's like good or not. But I think low key, if you're trying to beat Secret Mage on day one, this might be a deck that's like, you know, one of the sleepers for the best decks for expansion day, just because historically Reno Secret Mage has been very, very good into Secret Mage, and it's getting a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, Reno Secret Mage is one of the best anti-aggro decks in Wild, and has been for some time. Again, it does struggle a little bit more than normal Secret Mage against the slower stuff, because it doesn't have as burst, right, against like a Priest or a Warlock. But yeah, if there's going to be lots of like Odd Paladin and other Secret Mages day one, definitely a great choice. The upgrades that you got are all important. I always like a Jandis inclusion. I think Jandis is really, really good in this deck. I love the Alunith cut. I think Alunith is a deck that is a card that you kind of felt a little bit forced to play, but now we get to play Sag. I'm going to call it Sag, by the way, I think, rather than Sage. So I think I'm stuck with that. But yeah, we'll play that one. So yeah, one of the big winners as well from the expansion, and a deck that, you know, like we've said, it's been slept on for a while. We'll see if it finally catches on. I honestly wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if this deck kind of just ate up Secret Mage. Like, if Secret Mage kind of has gotten like phased out in favor of the Highlander version.
I mean, you always play Highlander, right? So you can play Reno, and Zeph, those blocking cards. This is one of those decks, though. Like, when I started building it, I was just like, all right, I'm going to put in this card, this card, this card, this card. And then the next thing you know, I was like, okay, I've got all the cards in. How many slots do I have left? And I was like 30 out of 30. And I was like, damn, that's how you know it's a good list. Right? So I'm excited actually to play this. I think this is probably going to be one of the first decks that I play, like competitively. I think this deck actually looks really, really good. And I'm excited to bully some Secret Mage players. For those of you guys that are smart and listen to our podcast, you'll know that you should be playing this instead. All right. So you want to talk about Odd Paladino, the deck that we've been crapping on all night?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, like, we figured we'd just like show you guys that I personally would recommend. It's pretty much just the stock version of what's seeing play now, except we've cut double surrender in favor of Omar Yogg. So yeah, this is what I'd be playing if I was going to do it. I wouldn't bother doing the 3-drop, 5-drop. If those cuts turn out to be good, then sure, we can like change things up and make slots and make space for them. But right now, I think this list is like really, really clean. I'm kind of looking at it now. It looks kind of filthy, actually. And a reminder that Odd Paladin is always good. And, you know, even if I don't think about it for a bit, it's like, oh yeah, Odd Paladin. That deck's probably like one of the top 5 decks in the format. But yeah, this is what I'd be running day one with Omar Yogg. I don't know. I just want to see Omar Yogg and just like get some info on it, on just how good it is, because I don't know. Like, I have it as one of my most powerful, but God, it's so random that it's like, how do we know?
Well, I think
actually see it.
That's exactly why, though, right? Like, I read it as like, for me, this is Counterspell for Odd Paladin. It's a little bit worse than Counterspell, but it's 1 mana, right, compared to 3.
Yeah.
And the reason I equate it to Counterspell is because it stops your opponent from clearing your board, right? Which is why we ran Never Surrender. And this is kind of just better than that, right? No Defiles, no Dark Skies, unless they trigger it earlier, and it's really hard, right, for Paladin and for Warlock and Priest opponents to kind of chain together 2 AoE spells, right? Normally they're like, all right, well, I drew my Defile, here's the board clear, that'll stall until I hit Voidlord, and then if they can't Defile, right, then they're screwed. So but yeah, I didn't ever think of the fact that it like eats up the coin as well. Yeah,
which is kind of cute.
Yeah, it's to me Omar Yogg is the scariest card in this deck now, behind Quartermaster. Like, it's every time I see that secret, I'm like, oh crap, how am I gonna play around this?
Yeah.
So, and it's not even like you can't even do it in like a very straightforward way like you could Never Surrender, right? Because you don't know what the hell's gonna happen. And like, what if you play
Yeah.
like your 2-mana spell gets turned into a buff card, and then you buff one of their recruits, and then you're like, oh well, thanks, you know. Who knows? But yeah, so moving on, let's talk about Reno Lock. So this is basically 29 cards plus Deck of Chaos. And the reason we're showing this, right, there's only one new card in this list, but I've seen a lot of people trying to shove a lot of bad cards into lists to make Deck of Chaos, like the payoff, super worth it, right? Like everybody talks about Hyreek, or things like that, or like, think about it like LPG, right? Like you don't run a bunch of crappy cards because, oh, I could run like 1 mana Major Domo, and that's insane. Like you don't do that. You just make your great cards even better. And so if you're looking at the list, there's like a lot of natural synergy already in the list, right? Just, we talked about Voidlord. Like Voidlord is never a card that I'm happy playing, right? Like I love cheating out, but I'm never happy playing a Voidlord. I'm about to be so excited to play a 3-mana 9/9 Voidlord. Like the smile on my face just thinking about it. It's kind of disgusting. But or like 4-mana Godfreys, and even stuff like 1-mana discounts on Bran, and Zola, I think are super relevant, for sure. But this is probably the list that I would take to ladder currently. And then eventually just like today I'd play this deck and then just shove in Deck of Chaos on expansion day. Yeah, so last but not least, we've got Gallicron Warriors. So this is me trying to make the menagerie thing good. Okay. And then when I theorycrafted it and looked at it, I was like, well, this actually looks super clean and potentially powerful. I think there's a bunch of new cards in here, so we can talk about them really briefly. So we've got Stage Dive, the card that we were talking about at the beginning of the show about being really, really powerful. I'm running Ringmaster's Baton and Ringmaster Watley just because like those are the new cards. Gotta at least test them and see how they're doing. But I think the big inclusion here is Tent Thrasher or Tent Trasher or whatever it's called. So the 5-mana 5/5, it's discounted for the number of unique minion types. So normally it's going to be like a 4-mana minion, maybe 3. But I think the big reason you're really excited to play this is the fact that you can now actually run Alexstrasza's Champion and not feel really bad about it, because Alexstrasza's Champion's like one of the best 2-drops ever printed in Hearthstone, and now you can actually get to run it and have it consistently active, especially with the fact that you can start tutoring your rush minions on 1 pretty consistently now. If you're looking to be super competitive, you probably should cut the Ringmaster Watley and maybe the Ringmaster's Baton for like a second Stage Dive and the 2 Awakenings. But I'm gonna at least be trying the Menagerie stuff out, just because I think the stat buffs on the Baton are actually pretty big, pretty relevant. And then Watley is probably the weakest card in this deck, but it's card draw. Card draw's good, and I'm gonna try it out.
And new cards are good too.
At least I can say I tried.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I love like the look of this Gallicron Warrior. I love the excuse that I have now to run Alexstrasza's Champion. I've been dying to play that card for a long time. I've just refused because, to me, every dragon that wasn't Scion just sucked.
Yeah.
So it was never going to be worth it. But now, with Thrasher again.
I keep calling it Thrasher because that was like the hockey team in the city that I grew up in. But it's Thrasher. But it's not
you
trash.
confused me for a bit.
It's not trash. It's a good
card. Yeah, maybe that's what's throwing me off. But yeah, Gallicron Warrior, I like this kind of direction in general. I don't know about the Baton stuff, but I think it's worthwhile because it is like a lot of stats, like potentially. But are you able to get away with a 2-mana 1 weapon?
Yeah, that's the big question.
We'll see. But yeah, I think this deck's really sweet. I like it a lot. I love Stage Dive, as I talked about earlier. So yeah, excited to try this one as well. I think as we get in.
I think this one and the Reno Secret Mage are the 2 decks that I'm like the most excited to try when it comes to meta decks, just because like I feel like every time we bring up a Chinese meta report, I always am just like, I don't know how they have Galakron so high up, right? I think Galakron Warrior sucks, and then stuff like Stage Dive and the Trasher get printed. I'm like, so this is why they could see the future.
Yes, exactly.
Like this actually looks like a playable deck in Wild, whereas the current Galakron builds don't. And so I'm excited to mess around with it and see what actually the potential Gallicron Warrior is in the format. But yeah, so these are just our kind of meta Theorycrafts. You can find the links to them down in the description below. Make sure you guys just click the little button that says show more. It'll expand. You'll see the decks there. But yeah, I mean, let's just wrap it up. We're getting close to the end. Let's just talk about overall impressions of the set. I think we've talked a little bit about how it's a little bit top heavy, right? Or like, there's not, maybe not top heavy, but like clear distinctions. There's like about 10, maybe 12 really, really strong cards that are probably going to see play. There's like another 10 to 15 cards that, might see play in meme decks or really buff like tier 5, tier 4 decks. So they're not really going to be meta. And then there's a lot of filler like there normally is for Wild. But overall, what is your impression of Darkmoon Faire for the Wild format?
My impression of the set is that it's very, very weak.
Really?
I know
Okay.
that you have disagreed a little bit on just how weak I think it is, and whether you've said it's kind of, I think, fine, not to kind of bury like your thoughts on the set. But yeah, I think it is really like a really, really weak set. That could be partly because it's in contrast to Skullman's Academy, which was one of the more powerful sets and was a really, really sort of interesting set as well in terms of the cards we got, not just in terms of their power level, but kind of the archetypes that they opened up, which is quite rare for Wild, right? It's not super common that you get to try a whole bunch of new stuff. But even so, I still think the set is very, very weak. There are only a handful of cards that I think have any potential to really make a meaningful impact on the format. I think that this is going to be one of the expansions that has the least overall impact in changing the landscape of Wild, where I expect the same decks to kind of just be the same kind of good decks. I don't expect there to be a massive shift. And I think like even more than that is that sometimes there are kind of like cards you see, or as you're evaluating the set that you think you're not exactly sure, but you see potential upside, right? Like you can see a range of outcomes for a card where you can certainly imagine a universe where like this play in this, but you wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't see play, but you can kind of get that range. With a lot of these cards, I just see a very limited range where I see, oh, it's unplayable, and I don't see any potential upside given the current card pool. So yeah, I think the set really is weak. I don't think it opens up a whole bunch of new stuff. I think Big Priest, Mage kind of got some cool stuff, I guess. But for the most part, it's very, very limited. And, we're going to keep playing Reno Priest and Odd Pally and Aggro Druid and stuff like that for some time. So yeah, that's my immediate thoughts on this.
I mean, I agree and disagree with you. So I guess I disagree with you where like I think the set's still pretty impactful. I would agree that we got kind of spoiled with Skullman's because Skullman's was an extreme outlier in the scope of like what Wild normally gets from an expansion. So like previous to Skullman's, we were excited if there were like 5 cards that were like Wild playable or like looked like they were gonna have a big impact in the format. And then we got Skullman's, which had like 30. And I think there's actually like 10 or 12 cards in Darkmoon Faire that will see play long term. Like I am very confident in that, and so I think when we're comparing it and coming right after Skullman's, it's really hard not to compare it to Skullman's. But Skullman's was the best expansion ever, and so expecting this to kind of compete with that might have been really high hopes. But I would also say that outside of those like 10 or 12 that are going to see play in like tier 1, tier 2 decks, there's a bunch of cards that I think have like potential, or like, like you always get these, it pushes tier 5, tier 4 archetypes. And I think those cards are good. I think they're always like underrated, but like pushing stuff like Secret Hunter or Beast Hunter, like it raises the base floor of these cards, right? Because they're like, I can totally see me playing this. And then eventually you'll get that one broken card that kind of busts it all open, and then because it has this really strong foundation, it ends up being really, really good. And so I think there are plenty of those cards in this set. Again, not as many as Skullman's, because Skullman's is crazy. But I will agree with you that I don't foresee the meta shifting too much. And because the 10 or 12 cards, they're in like, mid tier 2 decks that take them to high tier 2 or low tier 1. Or they're in like tier 3 decks that are going to push them into tier 2. And so, like, they're not going to unseat Reno Priest, Dark Glare, Aggro Druid. And the decks that are getting buffed don't look like, on the surface, obviously, we need to play it and see how the meta shapes out. But it doesn't look like, in theory, that it's going to, have super strong matchups into, like, we're looking at Secret Mage and Reno Secret Mage and Gallicron Warrior, Odd Pal, like all of these decks, and Big Priest, and they have bad matchups into Reno Priest. And then Secret Mage seems like it has a good matchup into Dark Glare, hypothetically. And then And we'll see how that matchup ends up playing out. And then Aggregate has a really, really strong matchup into stuff like Odd Paladin. So we'll see how it all plays out. I still think those 3 decks are going to be the best 3 decks of the format, but I think you're getting a like tier 2 right now. I think it is very wide. I think there's like 15 playable decks in tier 2, and I think you're adding a few to that, and you're getting a reshuffling of what's in tier 2, in my opinion. And so, like, is this the greatest set overall? No. Like, especially coming after Skull, it's really hard to be hype about this, but I think there's plenty of good stuff. And in 4 months or 3 months, when we're looking back at it, we'll be like, damn, this wasn't as bad as we thought. Or maybe when we get the first expansion next year, we're like, okay, this expansion sucks, right? Maybe this expansion wasn't so bad. But overall, I'm excited for it. There's a couple interesting cards, and I'm getting buffs to archetypes that I enjoy playing. So maybe that's why I might be a little bit biased. But I'm also like, I like the design of the cards. I think they're interesting. I think there's a fair bit of powerful ones, even if the meta as a whole doesn't change too drastically, which might suck because we're all kind of tired of it. But so that's me on my little soapbox about the set. I'm excited though. I think regardless of our opinions, it's amazing to have new content. More cards to play with, regardless. But that'll be it for our episode today. And just a reminder, we're going to be doing State of the Wild episodes every Sunday, especially as we dive into a new expansion and seeing how the meta shakes up or doesn't shake up. You'll have to tune in to find out. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so that you get notifications on when these videos go live, and make sure to share with others if you guys enjoy them. And also a reminder that we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the podcast distributors. So if you'd like to listen on the go, make sure you guys check us out there. Corbett, thank you again for joining me, friend. Let the people know where they can find you.
Guys, you can find me at CorbettGames on Twitter and streaming basically every day. Yeah, I'll be exploring everything that I can with the expansion drops and seeing whether things can actually get shaken up. So yeah, it's CorbettGames. See you guys then. And yeah, thank you for getting me out for the pod and everything.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys watching. We hope you all enjoyed. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the new expansion, and we will see you guys next time. Later.
Bye.